Hi, welcome to Gamers Chess Club online chess lessons. My name is Jason, and this is the 15th and final lesson in the Introduction to Chess series. Gamers Chess Club is a recreational chess club out of Conroe, Texas, focused on introducing chess to families in a fun and friendly environment. For more information, you can email us at gamerschessclub@gmail.com or visiting the Facebook page at www.facebook.com/gamerschessclub. Today we're going to talk about a few examples of checkmate just to touch on a little bit of in-game lessons in this final lesson of our introduction to chess. So we're going to talk about sometimes when you get to an end game you have just a few pieces and you need to know how to deliver the checkmate with just those few pieces. So we're going to learn to checkmate with two rooks. And we're going to learn to checkmate with a rook and a king, and then we're going to learn to checkmate with a queen and a king. And so these are great to get to know and be familiar with, especially if you play timed games, because sometimes you're in a hurry and you need to know how to do these quickly. Okay, here's our first scenario with learning to checkmate with two rooks. The idea is to use both rooks together to corner the king on one part of the board. So you start with let's show an easy example first. First you create a wall. So when you put your rook here, because the rook can go all the way across the board, the king can no longer access this part of the board as long as that rook is there. So let's say the king just moves over. Now you create a second wall. So now the king is forced to go up the board. And so what we're going to try to do is force that king all the way up the board. So let's say he goes up. We do it again. We create a wall here and a wall here. He has to go up. We create another wall. This keeps going. He keeps going to the top. And this is called the rolling rooks. We just take turns with the rooks, and this is checkmate. Okay. So this time, let's say he's a little bit better player and he's trying to keep us from doing that. Okay, so let's create our wall first, and let's say he comes closer to us. So we're going to give him a check, and now he comes here. So now if we were to move here, that would be a big mistake because he could just take our rook, right? So we don't want to do that. So what we want to do is just move our rook to the other side of the board. The rook has a major advantage over the king in that he can go all the way across. So let's say the king starts coming that direction. We can either come over here and start doing the same thing, or we can just work from this side so we have both sides going. So we have our wall here from this rook. We've now created one here. So let's say he goes up. We create another one. He keeps working towards us. We keep forcing him up, and he goes here. So again, it's going to take us a little bit extra step. We're going to come across the side of the board. He'll go over, and now we checkmate. So just use your rooks together. Walk the king down the board until you have two walls that he can't escape. Okay, so in this example, we only have one rook. We don't have both rooks. And so it's a little different. So what we're looking for here is we want to still corner the king. We want to decide, do we want to move him, push him all the way to the top of the board here, or do we want to push him along to this side? You just pick where you want to corner the king. The idea is that you want to put your rook, you want to put a wall with your rook between your two kings. Okay, so you're either going to move your rook here so that you have a wall between your kings, and that means you've shut off this part of the board to the king. He can no longer come down here. In this example, your goal would be pushing the king to the top. Okay, so let's say you wanted to push him to the side. Same thing. Put a wall between your two kings, and you're going to push him this way. Okay, so let me show you how this is done. So let's use this example first. So let's say the king is here, and we want to push him to this side. Let's say he goes up. What we're going to do is keep this wall here, and we're going to keep moving our king until our kings are directly across from one another. And if you're patient, they'll always get directly across from one another. Let's say he keeps moving. He comes down. So here let's do a waiting move because we want him to walk directly across from us. This means that we want him to walk into opposition so that the kings are opposed. So let's do a waiting move. Let's just move the rook one space here. Let's say he knows what we're up to. He goes up. We stay one square away from him. And now he comes down. So now we can move over with our rook. And now the reason it's important that the king is across from the other king is that when that's the case, he can't go this direction. All right. So if we would have, let's say we did it here. In this situation, the king could move over. And so remember, we're trying to push him to this side of the board. So we want to make sure he doesn't have that opportunity. Okay. So we're going to go here. He's going to come down, and we're going to give him a check here. So anytime they're opposed, this is kind of the magic position. You want to scoot your rook over, and let's push him over one more square. Okay. So let's say he goes this direction. Let's move our king. Again, we just want him on just the other side of the wall. So now the king's options are to get pushed further back or to come down. And this looks like the magic position again. The kings are opposed to one another. So we give him a check. He's forced to go back. This time he goes here. So again, let's not walk into opposition and just take longer. So let's try to make him walk into it. So let's come down here. He knows what we're up to, so he's going to go up. We're going to go up, and let's say he doesn't want us to push him back, and maybe he just walks over himself. Well, if that happens, you just go ahead and create your wall, create your new wall. Then he comes down. Again, we're going to try to get him to walk into opposition. And so here's his only move is here, and then when we're in this position, the kings are opposed. That means he can't come forward because he would be in a square where the king is attacking. And now you can deliver the checkmate. Okay, so let's try it the other way, and I'm going to make it a little bit harder this time. So let's create our wall here, and let's say he comes and he wants to start kind of pestering our rook a little bit. So let's say we do a waiting move. He comes here. This looks like the magic position. Our kings are opposed, but right now if we moved our rook here, he would just get taken because the king's here. So let's just move all the way to the other side of the board. He comes after us again. We can wait for him. Let's not walk into opposition. He's going to keep coming after us. We can move our king, and here he's coming after us again. We've got to protect our rook. Let's get to the other side again. So if we're patient, at some point we'll be able to make him step back. Okay, so he knows what we're up to. Let's say he backs off. We're just going to follow him, and then he's forced here again either to walk into opposition or move back. So he walks into opposition. We move the rook. He has to move back. We can do this again where he walks into opposition. This is the magic position. They're across from each other. We go ahead and deliver the check. And here he's going to come bother us again. And anytime he comes to bother the rook, just be sure to protect your rook first. Okay, so, and again, if he goes back early, that's even better. We can just move our rook up. And in this situation, you wouldn't want to move here. Again, don't walk into opposition. Let the opponent do that. So let's walk here. Let's say he doesn't want to walk into opposition because he knows what we're doing again. And here we are in our magic position for checkmate. So that's how to checkmate with just a rook and a king. Opposition, having the kings opposed to one another, is the key to pushing the king back, and then ultimately checkmate because he has nowhere to go back to now. Okay, now we're going to talk about checkmating with just a queen and a king. And to make this easy, we're going to actually treat this just like we did with the rook. There's going to be a couple of differences I'll talk about, but just like when we checkmated with the king and the rook, we're going to kind of use a similar method. So let's first talk about building a wall. So first we want to build a wall right here on this fourth rank, and we want to push the king all the way back. And again, you can do this to the side if you want to. Right now it wouldn't make sense to the side because we can't create a wall because our king is here. And we're going to have to get our king up to help us out here in just a minute. So let's first create our wall. So one of the differences here with the queen is that the king can't come over and bother the queen. Remember, you used to be able to come over and bother the rook, and then the rook would have to move to the other side. Here with the queen, the king is not allowed to get that close. So that's one difference when you have a queen instead of a rook. So let's say we're going to try to look for that magic spot where the kings are opposed to one another. And so as long as we stayed kind of one square away, eventually that will happen. So here it is. And so now we kind of move up and forces the player back. So we're going to come here again. They're opposed again, so we'll give a check. And let me show you what I was talking about here. The king's going to come over. And with the rook, he could have come here to b7, but he can't with the queen. So eventually he has to go back. So, and then here's the only thing you want to be careful of. When the king moves back to the final rank, you want to be careful of stalemate. So stalemate's something you can end up running into when you have a queen instead of a rook. So let's follow him all the way to the corner. And here's the example. There's no reason to do this, but let's say you moved your queen here to f7. Well, that's stalemate because you've gotten too close now. You just have to keep in mind that because your queen can attack diagonally, it gives the king less squares to escape to. So just be very careful with the queen to give him plenty of space. Stay over to the side. So in this situation, you just want to keep doing what you were doing. When it gets to this position, you can do it just like the rook if you want to. Come down here. It's checkmate because these 3 squares are not available to the king, and the king has nowhere to escape back to this time. So that's one way you can do it. The other option with the queen that wouldn't have worked with the rook is you can move here to g7. So in this case, if this were a rook, the king could move to either f8 or h8. But in this situation, he can't because the queen does attack diagonally. And the king can't take the queen because it's protected by his king. Okay? So again, when you get down to this position, you can do it just like you did it with the rook, or you can come a little closer this time. Okay, thanks so much for tuning in. This was the last Gamers Chess Club Introduction to Chess lesson in the series. So I appreciate you guys being here. This is the 15th lesson, so if you missed some of the others, just go back and look for them. It's lessons IC01 through IC15. All right, there'll be future lessons on the YouTube channel, but not necessarily part of this series. So I look forward to seeing you on future lessons.